Wow. Thank you, Dorian. Such a brilliant keynote on how trust in AI is such an important topic in today's world. So we're going to be moving quickly on to the next panel, which we've lined up for you today, where we're going to be joined by Valeria Carrillo from OnDeck, Ryan Dixon from Thrive, and Kirk Werner from Udacity, Dr. Lee McKenzie from the Universidad del Norte, and Lauren Hawker-Zaffer from Squirro, who we kindly heard from yesterday. So this topic and panel is all around digital transformation, the roles of technical skills in the future workforce, and the evolution of learning approaches. A very important topic, something I'm very passionate about, and I'm sure each of you are. How can we educate people on emerging topics such as AI and emerging technology? So let's give a quick introduction to who these amazing panelists are that have kindly joined us today. We're going to start with Valeria. So Valeria is a former classroom teacher, academic and content writer, a researcher, learning experience designer, and mentor to first-generation professionals. Valeria holds a Doctor of Education degree from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Her research was focused on learning, design, and leadership. Valeria's journey into education and tech has been fueled with an unrelenting passion for lifelong and life-wide learning, something I'm very much behind. She believes in the transformative power of education and has used her academic studies to contribute to the success of others. Next up, we have Ryan. So Ryan, over the last couple of years, has been working in the learning technology space with a focus on corporate learning. In his day-to-day, Ryan speaks with HR learning leaders around the world on ways they can better upskill, reskill their employees. Through these conversations, Ryan consistently hears about the way people work in an ever-changing and set to be affected by automation and innovation. Ryan is clear that the most exciting part of his role is working on ways to help people to consume knowledge and drive behavior change, something that's very close to my heart. At Thrive, Ryan and his team aim to future-proof the way people learn. Ryan and the Thrive team help by providing companies with a modern and collaborative platform that centralizes all information and training. Very cool. And next, we've got Kirk. So Kirk Werner is the VP of content for Udacity. So responsible for looking at the strategy and development of Udacity's nano degree, executive programs, and other instructional content. Udacity creates content to fill the job roles of today and the skill gaps of tomorrow with the world's workforce. As I'm sure you might have heard of the company, we've used Udacity in our past as well. So very great to have you with us. Prior to joining Udacity, Kirk was the director of content at Cooper, leading the development of technical content and educational materials, and the director of instructional design and content production at LinkedIn Learning. And he has led a team of 50 instructional designers and content producers in the development of award-winning online content. Over the last 20 years, Kirk has led teams building online educational experiences on topics ranging from programming languages to product management, executive leadership to financial services, and almost everything in between. In his time at Lynda, Kirk had the hypergrowth in course production adoption that led to its capacity growth from 60 courses in a year to 2,000 in a year, and its 1.5 billion acquisition by LinkedIn in 2015. Great to have you with us, Kirk. Next up, we've got Lee McKenzie. So Dr. Lee McKenzie holds a doctorate in education and social justice. He has worked as a teacher trainer across 4 continents and over a dozen countries, including Tajikistan, Switzerland, Austria, Germany, Spain, Czech Republic, Qatar, Vietnam, China, India, Ecuador, Chile, Colombia, Venezuela, and Peru. He currently works as an educational researcher and lecturer for Universidad del Norte in Barranquilla, Colombia. I've also been to Colombia, and a very cool place, and great to see you educating the people there. He has published research on language policy and planning, language and development, the impacts of student loans on HE students from low-income backgrounds, and student-teacher reflection. Among other research projects, he's been working on a cross-country research on a British Council commissioned investigation and into the challenge posed to primary and secondary school teachers in Colombia as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. He currently teaches business, English, and language teaching methodology remotely to Colombian undergraduates. It's a pleasure to have you with us here today. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Lee McKenzie. And finally, we have Squirro's very own Lauren Hawker-Zaffer, who is very kind to introduce a great idea yesterday and it's a real pleasure to have Lauren joining this panel again today. I'll take it over to you all to take this panel away, and excited to see the insight we're going to get from this today. Thank you, and looking forward to it.
Welcome to the Squirro AI Week 2021, and to this exciting panel session on digital transformation, the role of technical skills in future workforces and the evolution of learning approaches. My name is Lauren Hawker-Zaffer, and I lead the training and education engagements here at Squirro. I'm honoured to be part of this exciting event and welcome your own participation warmly. Joining me in this session today is a devoted panel of educators, academic researchers, learning content experts, and learning experience providers. I want to take this initial opportunity to both welcome and thank the panel for taking the time to share their views and professional insights on technical skilling and the corresponding or disjunctured evolution of learning approaches in the wave of digital transformations. Before we start though, let's pass the word to the panel and find out a little bit more about them. Lee.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lee Mackenzie. I'm a lecturer and researcher, and I've been working in Colombia, looking at education and development and language and development. And my research interests are everything to do with disadvantaged, vulnerable populations and social justice issues related to education.
Thank you. Valeria.
Hi everyone, my name is Valeria Carrillo and I am a learning experience design lead with On Deck. I am currently working on developing engaging learning experiences for the different fellowships that we have. And I have been working within the education field and technology for the past 7 years. And I'm excited to be here.
Excellent, thank you. Ryan?
Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm a business development manager at a company called Thrive. So we are a learning experience platform provider. So my day-to-day involves speaking to different levels of learning leaders in the corporate world and talking about their challenges with how they're going to upskill and reskill their workforce and prepare them for the future.
Excellent, thank you. And Kirk?
Hello, I'm Kirk Warner. I'm the Vice President of Content at Udacity. Udacity is a digital transformation and talent transformation platform, and we provide training in the technical skills of the future. And I've been building skills and educational technology content for over 20 years.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So thank you for taking the time to introduce yourself there. We're going to move on to start with the first component of our panel discussion. And obviously the forefront of our panel discussion is digital transformation. So let's look at digital transformation. For the past few years, we have attentively observed the ways in which digital technologies are dramatically reshaping industries. Many have witnessed this movement with praise and others through a gaze of skepticism. But with trillions of dollars being spent on digital transformations in organizations in 2020 alone, all eyes seem to be drawn to the anatomy of digital transformations and what components are key for the transformation to be an immediate and progressive success. In this transgression and with this focus, I personally fundamentally question, as both a tech enthusiast and a change champion, how much digital transformation is about the technology and how much is about the people involved in the transformation. So I'd like to open this thought up and ask you all, what is understood by the term digital transformation in your own opinion? And how is it affecting individuals? Where does the tech and where does the human, the social, the emotional fit into the movement?
Great question. I'll jump in on this one. So to me, So my understanding of digital transformation is using technology to replace what we'd probably deem as manual or outdated processes. And you see it in every kind of vertical in an industry at the moment. I mean, so I'm a civil engineer by trade, and I can tell you now, just going back 20, 30 years, if you look at how architects or engineers were drawing massive designs, it was with a ruler and pencil and paper. Whereas now we've now can automate a lot of that process, eliminate a lot of human risk. If you look at your manufacturers, with automation and robots, you've got AI now speeding up decisions. There's so much that's taking over. So with every intelligent person that's out there looking to drive innovation in every element of our personal lives and professional lives, it's really looking to reduce the amount of work and thought process that everyone has to go through, and that's where the digital element comes in to kind of make our lives easier.
I think you're right in that it's coming in to augment what a normal human process would be. Absolutely. I think that the application of the technology, the digital within the transformation, knowing where to apply an artificial intelligence to a large data set versus having somebody look at a spreadsheet to determine patterns. Absolutely. But I think that's also the important thing is applying human philosophies have to be applied as well. So for example, an openness to change has to be a part of digital transformation. It can't just be the application of technology. It has to be an understanding of where technology can best fit. And I think that that's one of the things that often gets missed in the growth of digital technology and digital transformation is knowing exactly where to apply just straight technology and when to apply a certain amount of human change management at the same time.
I would certainly agree with the last comment that you've made in terms of this openness to change and the human philosophical aspect of having this willingness and also the readiness. I think that itself in the whole development of digital transformation is where we're having more difficulties rather than successes. And I'd follow up maybe that question with, do you think that our own experiences with the digital, be it positive or negative, active or passive, are affecting the actual success of organizational digital transformation?
These are very big questions, Lauren. And I've been thinking as listening to the other panelists, is this a positive thing or is it a negative thing? And inevitably, it's going to be a bit of both. But obviously, I take a social justice perspective on this. That's my research background. So my questions are always, who is excluded in this digital transformation process? Who is left behind? Who is disadvantaged by this? Who is marginalized by this? And, having done research in the Colombian context into the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on schooling, I can tell you that tens of thousands of students have been left behind. So, in that context, the digital transformation is still an ongoing process. And we are not at the point yet, I don't think, at least not in the Global South, where this digital transformation can be seen as something positive.
I would add that when looking at it through that lens as well, these transformations, or when we're thinking about a digital transformation and we are seeing basically the brokenness of certain systems that we've had before, that the pandemic has kind of lifted this blindfold of what we thought was working or what was a digital transformation before, that turns out it wasn't necessarily a transformation at all, but just a digital tool that was just serving the same purpose of a tool that you would have had in a traditional setting, or a digital tool that was being misused. So I think when we talk about digital transformation, one, it really is important to think about what type of transformation we are referring to. Like Dr. Lee mentioned, who is really experiencing the digital transformation and who's perhaps getting left behind, and seeing how we can continue to perhaps understand the differences between the digital skills that we have and the digital literacies that we have as well, because I personally believe that those are both two different things that aid into a digital transformation, but they both need to be taught and they need to be embraced not just by the user, but also by the developers, by the founders of different companies that are creating these tools, and ultimately by the people who will then judge whether or not they are effective.
Yeah,
I would also,
go
sorry,
ahead.
Kirk, do you want to, I'll skip back and yeah, please contribute before we go into, Valeria sort of did a nice transgression into something that I was going to touch upon myself, but yeah, please.
I was just going to say that digital transformation happens at multiple levels. It happens at the individual level, where I can individually transform how I do things if I have access to the technologies. It happens obviously at the corporate level, where a corporation can change their processes, change their development, change their workflows. But it also happens at the governmental level, where an institution, a government can say, we want to transform our populace by giving them more access to technologies, by embracing a new technological society, like giving more to our population so they can transform themselves. We've seen that at Udacity, where we can partner with governments in terms of transforming their populace at a large scale, and significantly make a difference in changing the population's direction and transforming that country's direction to be more digitally literate. And once there's some digital literacy inside that company and inside that country, now you can think about how you can additionally transform them over time. And it's an ongoing process. Like you said, it's not a one-time thing. You just transform to A to B. You're setting up a long scale change that is happening over and over again. I tell my team, it's an evolutionary process. It's happening over time. You can't change it. Sometimes there's a broad jump. There's a mutation that happens, but it is happening. Transformation is happening. And to be a successful organization, whether it's an individual organism, a company, or a country, we have to be open to a large-scale digital transformation as the world continues to evolve.
Would anyone like to comment on what Kirk has said before we transgress into something that we've touched upon in our natural development of our discourse? I mean, we've talked obviously a lot about the whole digital and the technical, and we have seen that obviously many researchers and educators, they speak of being, as Valeria mentioned, literate in the digital and technical. And we also may question, I mean, are these synonymous? Or what is the difference? And can we say or speak of that digital transformation has foregrounded the necessity for a technical skill set, or has it reduced the necessity? I mean, where does the digital and the technical fit into this whole scope of transformation on different levels that we've touched upon?
I think for me, the difference between understanding the skills and understanding literacies come from basically knowing that, in my opinion, digital skills answer two questions. They answer what and they answer how. And literacies answer why, answers when, and for whom. So you can't really have one without the other. And I think that they are both just as important, because it is, for example, learning how to use PowerPoint and learning what kind of content you're going to put into the PowerPoint. all of that process is a skill, but the literacy comes in because you need to understand your audience. So you need to know why you're adding the content that you're adding into this tool. And you need to know when it's appropriate to be able to push this type of content out to your audience as well. And you also have to understand beyond your audience, like how you can make it accessible to them. Because there might be somebody who is out there who would not be able to see, for example, what you're putting if it's an image. So you would think about perhaps like adding description in words that can be read aloud to them. And all of that comes with digital literacy, which is necessary for the content to not just be something that you put out there, but something that can be effective.
So maybe, Ryan, you can tell us from your own experience as a learning experience provider, representing that angle of the discussion, how experience providers like yourself are actually trying to address the development of skill and literacy. If they are able to do it or they're not able to do it at present, what are the maybe hurdles that they're faced against?
Sure. So when corporates are looking to develop both the technical and the digital skills literacy, so I guess it's kind of broken down into, you've got to be able to give the foundations. So that's what Ariel was mentioning. You've got to have the building blocks of, do I understand what I'm doing? So the easiest example with us is we ask people to encourage employees to develop their own content and create their own content. Now you'll teach them, okay, what's appropriate, how do you upload it is the technical side, and what content you upload, that's more the kind of the digital literacy side of things. So it's the same when you're looking to build together a way of imparting that knowledge. So is it a mixture of being able to give the theory behind what you're looking to train? How can you provide practical knowledge, and how can you coach and not just take a multiple choice assessment, but how can we really judge someone on their competencies within a certain area, be it a specific technical skill like coding, for example, or how competent is someone in Python?
Mm-hmm.
I guess I should contribute as well. But I really enjoy listening to all of your contributions. I am not an expert, I'm not a techie, and I have suffered from techno fear and techno anger in the past. But I see that it has enormous potential. I always think of, I think it was John Daniels, who was the Dean of Open University, who talked about the iron triangle, which is cost, access, and quality, and how the digital transformation has broken open this iron triangle, because you can guarantee quality while reducing the cost and increasing access using technology. So, there are people in rural areas of Brazil that now have a degree because of technology, because they previously didn't have access to universities. It was just far too far for them to go. But then on the flip side, what are we using technology to do? And you look at China, and in autocratic societies, they're using technology to as a mechanism of control. So, and you're looking at multinational companies as well, and they're using the technology to offshore their labor, to reduce the costs of labor, which is leading to unemployment. And the salaries of these people, for example, there's a lot of BPOs in Colombia, are just above the minimum wage. So I don't know if you'd ask those people if the digital transformation was something positive or it was something negative. I think it really depends on the context. And going back to what Kirk said about the different levels of transformation, thinking about the micro level, at the individual level, are individuals benefiting? Are there opportunities being expanded by technology? Do they have a say in the technology that they're being asked to use, or is it being imposed on them for other reasons?
Yeah, I would like to add on the digital and technical question. We look at learning content in 3 levels at Udacity. One is the kind of sweet spot that Udacity has been in the past, is that practitioner level, that technical level, the engineers. How do I create more machine learning engineers? How do I add more content for cloud developers? The people that are actually doing the work, the ones that you expand, rolling up their sleeves, actually doing the coding. Those people need to know how to do something, when to do it, why to do it. They also need to be able to provide practical application of what they've done. The level above that, the leaders of those groups, they need to understand strategically, how do I understand which programs to work on and which ones not to work on, which ones are more cost effective, which ones aren't. So they don't need to necessarily have the same practical skills in the technologies, but they have to understand the technologies in a way to make strategic decisions. And the level below the practical learner is the literacy team. And that's the team that has to understand, not necessarily that I need to build an application here, but what does the application need to do? What do I need this to do? So that's someone who just needs to understand the literacy of the technology enough to have a conversation with the engineering team to be able to say, I need this technology to do this thing. I think it needs to use some of these capabilities. Can you help me make it and put it into practice? And so that team needs to have a literacy or a basic fluency in the technology. They don't need to be doers, but they need to be able to communicate with the doers. And that's where the kind of digital transformation, digital communication skills, that digital fluency of those technologies has to kind of run all the way through an organization, and not just in the hands of those that are doing the work, that are rolling up their sleeves, but the ones who are having conversations about that work and the ones who are making decisions about that work as well. So we think of it as a 3-tiered system, all of which needs to be able to have conversations around the basic technology. Not all of them need to have the practical skills.
I would certainly personally very much agree with that. And I think that there's a lot of discussion at the moment in the field around this digital and data and tech fluency. And then I'd maybe pose the question back to you in the sense of, where are, not necessarily organizations, but individuals as well, and governmental entities failing when it comes to providing that basic digital or data fluency? I mean, Lee, you also picked up on maybe people that are not degree holders, they have low income jobs or lower income jobs, and they need that skill development to access new higher paying jobs in fast growing industries. I mean, it's impossible, as we've touched upon in multiple times in this discussion, to escape technology and to escape this digital transformation, technical transformation. So I suppose there's multiple questions going back to, obviously, where are, or who is, or where can we improve, who's failing? And as educators, learning experience providers, creators, what do we need to do from an angle of learning approaches to that situation?
Yeah, I would say from an approach point of view, and I know that I've been at the driving end of some of these sometimes, is we don't always have to take advantage of high cost technical delivery systems. Oftentimes we look at how can we make this better with virtual realities and AR systems that are going to require the learner to have a very powerful system to even run. I know that from some of my early experience doing video training, when we were providing video training, when people still had dial-up modems, there's an entire world of people who didn't have access to the speed at which they needed to consume video. And so being able to provide, I think Valeria had mentioned, accessible content so that people without a faster connection or a consistent connection, or even a ability to download, consume, and then in a kind of a flipped classroom mode, go back to smaller chunks of digital experience to provide that digital learning. I think that that's a better system than make it as technologically advanced as possible and force people to have a high level of technology just to consume it. I think that disadvantages, and Lee's earlier point, disadvantages a large swath of the global South, where we can actually provide them more content that they can consume, and then the experiences are just the things they have to do, maybe in an online or engaged environment.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you, Kirk. I think the key question for me is, how can we use technology to address inequality, and particularly educational inequality? Because I see that the wealthiest strata have access to broadband internet, have the devices in which to access all this content. But how can we use this technology to bring this to poorer communities which don't even have running water or regular electricity? And that's the challenge I see in countries like Colombia, which is one of the most unequal countries in the world. I see the potential for a lot of people to be left behind, and the potential not being realized, them not having the opportunity to develop these skills because they don't have the resources to do so.
I think something that you mentioned there that has gotten me thinking a lot is, like we view transformation to have this positive connotation, right? Because the word itself seems to be positive, like you're transforming. But the more and more that we are talking about it, it really does feel like what Kirk had mentioned before, this is an evolution. And when you think of the evolution of something, and specifically like the evolution of humanity, it really is something that we can't help. So technology is kind of taken already, it's a mind of its own, and it's kind of going, and it is leaving people behind, and it is changing. And for us to kind of like see it more as with a realistic lens, perhaps like viewing it as an evolution, but trying to see how we can make sure that it is an equitable evolution, could be the starting point of us really being more, we want to be more intentional about making sure that the evolution is accessible to everyone, and it's something that can help all people. And as a teacher, I have seen the transition basically of going from this didactic pedagogy, this place where the educator was the one that held all of the knowledge and would then teach it to the people in their classroom, to now transitioning, or I guess going with the same theme here, like education is changing. So we are also evolving as teachers. We are no longer the ones that have all of the answers, because kids can have access to information from different points. So kind of understanding how educators can become people who are going to lead their students to be able to develop critical thinking skills, so they can siphon through all of the information that might be thrown at them, and understanding better how they can apply the critical thinking skills so that they can acquire these technical skills, or they can acquire specific processes on their own, but also remember to critically evaluate their skills and how they're helping the larger picture or humanity as a whole.
I think that actually brings us quite nicely on to what I wanted to end the discussion on. So we're talking about promoting change, and we have touched upon it in various angles in our discussion there. And if we look at it, we can see that a number of education providers and offerings in general have been criticised for the closed eye learning approach they take to enabling access to in-demand jobs at scale, providing, as we've spoken about, people that are less advantaged with the opportunity to develop a skill. And the constant or corresponding, I would say, reinforcement and support that accompanies this behavioral and cognitive change, so that they can really be part of what is the digital transformation and access higher paid jobs, access industries that are accelerating and growing and fast changing. So I suppose I would end the discussion on maybe asking you to really think about what needs to be changed now, and to what extent to ease the way for the development of appropriate technical skill sets, or this digital literacy that helps not only people develop a fluency in something that they're unfamiliar with, but also to really possibly develop skills for coaching others into new ways of working or new experiences, or to develop knowledge or train on new behaviors and new mindsets. I mean, where can and should we as educators provide the support?
Well, I think the first question should not be, and unfortunately, I've been in a lot of discussions with people who think that the first question should be, how can we make more money out of this? And there are a lot of interests whose aim is to make money, and I completely understand that. But in terms of education, the question should be, how can we use this to improve the lives of the children or the people that we are educating? How can we use technology to address inequality? And I mean, I don't want to be the negative voice in the room with regards to technology, because 30 years ago, I think if we'd had the COVID pandemic, the effects on education would have been massive, much more massive than they have been currently. So it has enabled us to kind of weather the storm of the pandemic. But I'll always come back to that question: how can we prevent digital inequality? How can we ensure that it doesn't just become about money? And I can give you so many examples. I mean, one example is classrooms are now, a lot of managers, educational managers say, well, you're teaching online, so we can put 100 students in your class instead of the 20 that I'm used to having. But how can you give personal attention to those 100 students? So I think a lot of people see this from a financial perspective. How can we make more profit? How can the institute get more money? And blended learning is another example of that. I've seen examples where they basically don't reduce the cost of the course, but they put half the course online for students to work through independently. And they don't require a teacher for that part of the course, or they pay that teacher a reduced rate. So it leads to teachers losing their jobs, and the institution still continues to charge the same price for the courses. So, I'll just come back to that obviously companies need to make money, and, that is very, very important for society that they do so. But, don't leave behind the global south, which is also what is happening. A lot of these industries, these tech companies are in the global north, in the industrialized countries. And the global south does not have the resources to compete with the global north.
I think it's behooving to any company to really look at not only what is their primary market, and like I said, Udacity's primary market has been the practitioners, the ones who are already kind of in that digital experience. But as we expand into growing the teams and groups of people that have to get into digital experiences, to looking at how to reach them. And I think that Dr. Dr. Lee's got really some excellent points talking about how do you reach the global south if technology is actually the barrier for them getting access. If a technology training company can't provide online instruction, what can they provide? And I think that more and more companies are seeing that and trying to find ways to bridge that digital gap, which we in the United States originally thought was going to be computers in every kid's hands. And then when we realized that they could get an iPhone or an iPad in their hands, it was really get a learning experience in their hands rather than just a device, which they're now think of as a toy rather than a tool. I think the same thing applies to the rest of the digital South, is being able to deliver the content in meaningful ways to the more broad global experience than just you can sit and watch videos on your iPad, because that's not learning, that's just watching. And so we have to build experiences that involve putting down the tablet and thinking through or working through the actual building of the tool, building of the skills, whether it's how to build a house or how to build a website or how to build a database. All those skills involve putting your hands on something. And so the more we can build experiences that have people do those hands-on work, even if they're not online when they do those things, if they're doing those in an offline capacity where they're thinking about it and writing down their steps, that's an experience that then they can have evaluated to say, did you actually learn this thing? And so the more we can build those experiences in, I think we're doing a better job of that. More companies are doing a better job of partnering with those countries to say, how can we do a better job of teaching your populace the things you need to be successful in this new global economy?
Just as a quick kind of bit to tag on the end of that, Kirk. I came across an interesting quote the other day. A gentleman named Andrew Jacobs. It's very much about the way that people should be delivering that learning. So it was something along the lines of what you should be when you're looking to deliver a learning experience. The approach you should have in your mind is show people the path, hold their hand to the door, put their hand on the door, and take a step back and let them choose whether or not they are going to go through that door. So give all the right resources. If they want to go through to the next door, they need a hand once they're through there, be on hand to be able to do that. But essentially giving them that onus. And I appreciate, like Dr. Lee is saying, in these places where it's really hard to deliver, I can see, I'll be interested to see how we can, as a planet, start to bridge those gaps in that digital transformation. But in terms of the approach that we should have, that's very much, the quote itself really resonated with me in how people learn. Give them that safe space, give them all the tools they require. A lot of people have YouTube, so they already have access to this, but show them the guided path, put the resources in their hands and the activities to help them better themselves, and just be there to support them through that process.
So in a note of support, then I'd like to bring the discussion to an end. Unfortunately, we've not got any more time today to continue this extremely interesting and insightful discussion. I want to take the opportunity, obviously, to extend a huge thank you once again to all of you for joining the panel today, and to you as an audience who've watched us discuss various topics of passion. It's been wonderful. I'd also advise you to have a look at our own educational offerings. Here at Squirro, we offer a variety of technical and non-technical courses on our own Squirro Academy. So you can certainly go and check them out at learn.squirro.com. Thank you.
Thanks.
You can say thanks if you want. It's not like thanks and that's it.